Hi, I'm David Shepherd, and I'm the Head of Market Development for Refinitiv for the Middle East and North Africa region. I'm delighted to be joined by Bryan, who's the CEO of the DFSA, and today we're going to be talking about balancing regulation with innovation. Bryan, I think perhaps one of the biggest challenges that we're seeing in the industry at the moment is for regulators to find that perfect balance between how do we encourage innovation, but at the same time protect the society around what's going on from innovation as well. So, how are you addressing this challenge?
Well, it is quite a difficult balance sometimes. I mean, we have to recognize first, I think, that the financial services industry has become a technology industry, and that's not backing up. That's only going forward. So we all have to adjust to the fact that technology is going to be part of our future and an increasing part of our future. And probably the most difficult element right now is that change is always happening, but change is happening at a pace right now that's faster than we've ever seen. And so, getting back to your question, how do we get the right balance? I mean, I have a list of objectives that I'm held responsible for as the chief executive of a regulator. And none of those objectives in our regulatory law say except for fintech. So my objectives are my objectives. And that's, promoting financial stability, protecting consumers, protecting the reputation of the DIFC, et cetera. There's a longer list than that. But I recognize that innovation is necessary and will be necessary for the future of finance. So I have to figure out a way to allow innovation while at the same time complying with those objectives. And what we've done as our initial step there is I've formed a specialized team to deal with operational risk. And that operational risk team includes fintech and cybersecurity risks. I've also realized that it's much easier to teach an IT person something about supervision than it is to teach a supervisor something about IT. So I have to look at creative ways of hiring people so that they can talk to these innovators in a way that is not trying to kill their idea in some ways. So we've had to adjust our own people and our own processes to meet the objectives and to meet the goals of the future of finance. And I think we're slowly getting in that direction, but it's a challenge to get the balance right.
Absolutely. So, in fact, our CEO of Refinitiv, David Craig, each year he makes 5 predictions at the beginning of the year about what he thinks is going to happen in the world of risk and compliance. And last year he said that he thinks within 5 years, within the regulators, perhaps 50% of those who are in senior positions will have some sort of background in computer science, data science, and that management. So you think that's one of the key sort of challenges now for the regulators?
Absolutely. That understanding technology and understanding the risk of technology is one of the biggest challenges that we have in front of us. And this may sound facetious, but it goes directly to what you've just said, is that when I formed this operational risk team, right now it's my smallest team, that I have prudential risk experts, I have conduct of business risk experts, and I have operational risk experts. The operational risk is the smallest team. 10 years from now, that could be my largest team, and 10 years from now, that could be my only team. We're all in some type of struggle to prevent the 4 letters robo in front of our title, right?
Absolutely.
So robo CEO, who knows?
You'll either be a robot programmer or a robot cleaner. I think that's the 2 stages of society we can
That's
reach.
exactly right.
It's an interesting dynamic, and actually in the 5th annual MENA financial crime report that we just released this year, in fact today at the conference, one of the things we talked about is we expect to see, we're seeing a drop-off in the number of sort of admin type roles that are being assigned in compliance, but a huge sort of drive towards people who are looking for highly skilled compliance professionals. So I keep saying to people, if you're a lazy compliance person, there's probably not a great career path for you going on right now, but if you're a good one, you're becoming more and more important. So it's great to hear that from your side as well.
That's absolutely right. That if you can't, if your job doesn't have anything to do with judgment, you're at risk.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything that can be automated at the low level is and frankly, not just this industry, we've seen it in the past. So
That's
it's what we should be expecting.
Exactly
Let me ask you as well, in perhaps not necessarily purely from the DFSA's point of view, but more around the MENA region. Obviously, there's this balance between financial inclusion as well.
Yes.
And I think when I talk to regulators here, particularly central banks, I've heard some very interesting conversations where they've said to me, of course, we want to meet the highest standards of regulation, but I have 40% of the people over the age of 24 in my country don't have a bank account.
Correct.
So what do you think is the right way of approaching that balance there around financial inclusion in the world of fintech as well?
Yeah, I mean, fintech and really when in the financial inclusion space, the biggest development in fintech, I think, revolves around the payments industry, and particularly in the GCC, where you have so many people that are here from somewhere else, that we should be the payments capital of the world, just given the demographics, and whatever we can do to make those payments happen for the base of the pyramid clients, to make those payments happen cheaply, fastly, efficiently, for those people, the better. And if the fintech world can solve that problem by including them in a formal financial institution space, without damaging them, and without harming their precious wealth, I'm all for it.
Yeah, it's the other balance to what we saw a few years ago with the de-risking scenario, is that we effectively saw those challenges and people taking a very conservative approach, which really did hurt the SME sector right across the region and clearly those at the bottom of that pyramid. So I'd agree. I think there's a lot of opportunity there to move things forwards at the front. And what about specifically then in terms of the environment that you've created? You started with that earlier. You know, you guys have been doing some very interesting work in terms of the regulatory sandboxes that you're creating.
Yeah.
Can you just tell us a little bit about how that works and what you think that's actually achieving?
We have an innovative testing license now, which is our sandbox initiative, where we accept firms into this testing license environment on their way to a full license, I guess you could say. So we allow firms to experiment in a regulated environment, but with a limited number of clients and a limited product line, to get them used to what it takes to be regulated and what it takes to be a formal financial institution. And we do a lot of consulting, a lot of hand-holding along the way. We learn from the firms, I have to say, and I hope they're learning from us, of what it takes to be a regulated financial institution. But we're working with a number of firms now in that ITL space, and a couple have graduated into full financial licenses. Some of them won't graduate, but that's our way of encouraging innovation in a protected environment, so that the firms are in a live environment, but without risk to the wider sector with a narrow group of clients.
And I mean, from an outside perspective, one of the things that's been interesting to watch in the emergence of sort of the work that the regulators are doing in the fintech space is the relationships that are starting to appear between different regulators across the world.
Yeah.
And I think the DFSA have been right at the sort of forefront of that type of work.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us a little bit about what you're learning from interacting with some other teams, perhaps not even in the region, but other regulators around the world?
Because we've got, one of our big, and it's a multilateral effort right now with this GFIN, which is the Global Financial Innovation Network.
I don't know how you remember every acronym. It's a good effort
on that one. But with GFIN now, this is a multilateral effort. And it really goes to the core of what the DIFC was set up to be, as a global hub. So if a firm is in the regulatory sandbox in the UK, we'll allow them to operate also in the DIFC, to experiment with that product and coordinate with the UK or Singapore or Hong Kong, the other members of that GFIN network. So that's our multilateral effort, and I really want to put a lot of effort into that. But we also have bilateral efforts. We've got fintech agreements with 7 different jurisdictions, to where we share and collaborate the ideas and the products, business models that are working, that aren't working, and what to do about getting the ones that aren't working to start working.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, this is when I talk to the fintech companies, one of the challenges they have. They say I spend a year working with the regulators in a particular country, and we finally get them to understanding everything we're doing and the opportunity, and then I hop next door and I start all over again. So it's good to hear about those sort of unilateral efforts as well.
Yeah.
I'm just going to ask you one more question, which is almost an unfair question, but let's have a crack at it, which is thinking about all of these different emerging technologies that are out there on the horizon at the moment. Which do you think in the sort of short to near term future are going to be the real game changers in the regulatory space?
Well, I mean, the KYC utility functions, I think, can be game changers, and blockchain distributed ledger technology is a game changer. We're still in the nascent phases of seeing what blockchain can do and seeing what the DLT can do. But I look at those KYC utilities and any effort that we can do to eliminate the amount of work that goes into false positives in the whole KYC and monitoring process, the better. So that's the game changer I'm looking for.
So the SAR reform program is a big area for you to look at, absolutely.
Yeah,
So.
absolutely.
Okay, yeah. Well, thank you so much, Bryan. I think it's wonderful to get your assessment from the regulator's point of view. Wonderful to have you here with us at the 13th MENA Regulatory Summit.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation, Dave.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Bryan.
it.